Tonight, we're leaving the Nile's green edge behind and stepping into the wild emptiness of the desert, the old trade route where almost everyone turned back, and only a rare few ever reached the next oasis. This is not a story of conquest or of battle, but of patience, planning, and the quiet math of survival. The kind of crossing where the wrong decision at dawn might mean thirst by midday, and the thirst by midday might mean never seeing another sunset. If you've been with us before for our journeys through flood season or our explorations of Egypt's cooling tricks, then you'll know the rhythm already. We're going to move slowly, step by step, as if walking under starlight. But this time, we're following a harder path, the one that carried incense, salt, and gold across seas of sand, where survival depends on every skin of water, every shadow of cloth, every star in the night sky. Even if you've never joined us before, don't worry. Think of this as a guided walk, steady and safe. By the end of the night, you'll know how ancient travelers ration their water, how they read the constellations to find their way, how they turned an oasis into a living machine that kept caravans alive. And if you're just here to learn a little without committing to the whole journey, there's plenty for you too. Practical ancient tricks for staying cool, for keeping your body steady and neat, for seeing through mirages without panic. So settle in, let the room quieten, and listen to the desert breathing, because only 1 in 100 survive this crossing. And tonight, we're going to learn how they did it. Stay with me, and by the time we reach the first palm shadow, you'll know exactly how that 1 in 100 made it, step by step. The desert does not begin with a single step, it begins with a decision, a mark on a map, an agreement between merchants, a caravan assembled at the edge of a green where the Nile's fields end, and the sand first stretches out like pale sea. That edge is busy in its own way, camels groaning as they are loaded with baskets of incense resin from Arabia, salt slabs cut from the lakes far to the north, linen bundles wrapped tight with copper ingots. Gold dust is measured into leather pouches, carefully tied so not a grain is lost, and all of it wealth enough to build temples, to build armies, to adorn kings, is balanced on the knowledge that somewhere beyond the horizon lies another oasis, another well, another chance to drink. But this is where most turn back, for the desert has no sympathy for treasure. What matters here is water, and before a single foot leaves the shade of the palms, there's arithmetic to be done, as unforgiving as any judge. A single water skin, made from goat hide, can hold perhaps 3 or 4 liters. A camel might carry 8 or 10 of these slung across its flanks, but it will also drink deeply itself. A man can survive on 2 liters a day if he is careful, if he walks slowly, if he does not give in to fear and drain his ration in one long swallow. But in the desert, thirst comes early and lingers late, and once the skin is emptied, no wealth can fill it again. So they counted and recounted, fingers moving over the knots of leather ties, voices low and steady. The journey was measured not in miles but in sips. You can picture them now. A scribe crouched at the edge of the caravan, reed pen scratching onto a scrap of papyrus, columns of numbers beside the names of each man and beast. 2 days to the first well if the pace is steady, 3 if the wind turns, 1 extra skin for every 5 people, held in reserve for an emergency that no one speaks of aloud. It is not drama, it is survival mathematics. The quiet knowledge that the body loses water with every breath, every drop of sweat. That arithmetic hangs over the camp like the first shimmer of heat. And so, and so, the rhythm of the journey begins before the first footstep. The plan is always the same. Depart at dusk, walk through the cool of the night, rest at dawn. The desert by day is too heavy, its light too sharp, but under the stars it becomes almost gentle. The sand firm with stored coolness, the air soft enough to walk without gasping. Lanterns are hung low, so their light cannot be seen from too far. The stars themselves are brighter guides. At the hour when village fires are being doused back in the Nile Valley, the caravan begins to move, a line of silhouettes sliding into the pale distance. Why this timing? Because the body itself is an oasis, and it must be protected. At night, sweat is less, thirst is lower. The heart does not labor so hard. By resting at dawn, lying in the long shadows of rock or cloud screens, the caravan avoids the hours when the sun burns fiercest. It is patience given shape, and patience is what the desert demands. But notice how one decision folds into the next, because once you choose to leave at dusk, you must also choose when to stop, and stopping means knowing where the next well lies. Some were marked on crude maps, others memorized in songs passed from guide to guide. From the date palms, you walk until Orion's belt is at your shoulder, then turn toward the dawn star. Then you will find water. These were not riddles, but directions, etched into memory because memory wastes nothing, and in the desert, wait is the true enemy. And yet, memory alone was not enough. Wells could run dry. A sandstorm could bury the mouth of cistern. A rival tribe could guard it. This is why the arithmetic mattered. You did not set out unless you had water to reach the next oasis and return if needed. That simple rule saved lives, and ignoring it ended them. So you see the chain already forming. Trade creates the need to cross. Water creates the rules of travel. The rules of travel shape the rhythm of the day and night. And this rhythm, patient as the stars themselves, is what made the difference between the 99 who failed and the rare one who survived. And yet, the map and the arithmetic are only the beginning, because once you've chosen your path, the desert still has one more question. How will you keep your body cool enough, steady enough, calm enough to make it across? That is where we turn next, to the art of clothing the body and of cooling the mind. Before the caravan takes its first long march into the night, there is a quieter preparation that begins in the shade of the palms. The dressing of the body, the careful arranging of linen and leather, the tying of knots that seem small in the moment but might mean life when the horizon is nothing but sand. The desert, to the untrained eye, looks like the kind of place where less is better, where a bare back might catch a breeze, where shredding layers might feel like relief. But the Egyptians knew otherwise. They had watched how the desert treats bare skin, how quickly the sun sears it, how the heat lingers in muscles when sweat dries too fast. Their answer was not to strip down, but to add more, to clothe the body in such way that the air itself became an ally, caught and slowed between folds of fabric, cooled and redirected so that the skin was never left defenseless. Linen was the fabric of choice, spun from flax that grew in the wet fields of the Nile, carried across the desert in bales as valuable as food. It was light, almost translucent when held to the sun, but its weave was tight enough to blend the worst of the glare. Wrapped around the body in long loose layers, it created moving pockets of shade. so that every step meant not just progress across the sun, but a private shift in temperature. When the wind rose, those folds lifted like sails, bringing coolness with them. When the air stilled, they hung heavy, sealing in a film of sweat that cooled the body more slowly, more steadily than evaporation alone. The head was given just as much care. A square of linen, doubled and folded, was wound carefully around the crown, its edges draped to fall across the neck and shoulders. The desert sun strikes hardest from above, and the difference between a bare head and a covered one was the difference between strength at noon and dizziness by mid-afternoon. Guides taught their apprentices how to tie these headcloths so they would not slip in the wind, but also not pinch the temples. A knot too tight could lead to a pounding headache that drained energy long before it first did. A knot too loose could leave the cheek exposed to the light, a mistake that might blister before anyone noticed. There were smaller tricks too, the kind that rarely made it into official records, but which passed from mouth to ear among those who had walked the desert more times than they could count. A strip of damp cloth tied around the wrist or ankles, for instance, cooled the blood where it ran close to the skin. A folded band pressed to the chest under the robe helped the heart keep its rhythm steady. The desert is not only a matter of heat and thirst, it is a matter of panic, of the body betraying the mind with sudden quickened breaths. These quiet tricks steadied the body, and in steadying the body, they steadied the mind. Food, too, was chosen not for indulgence but for balance. Dates, carried in small bundles, offered quick sugars that could be drawn out slowly if chewed one at a time. Salted fish or dried meats were rationed, not simply as sustenance, but as a way to replace the salt lost to sweat. Oversip panic, that desperate need to drink too much water at once, was soothed by eating first, letting the body's craving soften before lifting the skin to the lips. The guides reminded their men, water cools the mouth, but food steadies the blood. Together, they tricked the mind into patience. Even the way they walked was part of this art of endurance. The pace was calm, measured, never hurried. The desert punishes taste, not with drama, but with exhaustion that creeps in quietly until it is too late to turn back. Walking behind camels, letting the beast cut the wind and throw their long shadows, was another hack. Not heroic, but practical. A way to steal an extra degree of coolness with every step. The sand beneath their broad feet was firmer too, packed down in a line that made human step easier. A man who walked in a camel's shadow could last longer than one who walked beside it. And all of this, the folds of linen, the damp bands, the salted dates, the unhurried stride was not simply about the body, it was about the mind. Fear is loud in the desert. It rises with the heat. It swells in the chest when the horizon stretches too far. It whispers at night when the silence is so complete that the sound of your own pulse feels like thunder. Panic leads to waste, of water, of strength, of judgment, but calm, patient pacing, walking as though you have all the time in the world, even when you know you do not, was the greatest survival trick of all. And yet, once the body was dressed, once the pace was set, another challenge waited, because cloth and salt and patience could carry you only so far. The desert had no roads, no signposts, nothing but dunes that shifted with every wind. You had to read the sky itself, and so, the next lesson on this crossing is navigation, not by compass or map, but by stars, sand, and memory.